You still say that autism is caused by vaccines?
Yeah, autism is caused by vaccines.
Now, we got to talk politics for a minute because RFK Jr. has been nominated to be the head of the Health and Human Services Department in the Trump administration, but might just have cost himself his job with this controversial interview answer. This clip from an interview that RFK did with John Stossel is a couple months old, but it's being recirculated right now because RFK was nominated by Trump to be the head of HHS, which would oversee FDA, CDC, many other health agencies. He'd be in charge of all of it and have a lot of discretion over medications and health decisions, and yes, vaccines. So people are recirculating this clip where RFK Jr. said he does, in fact, believe that vaccines cause autism.
You still say that autism is caused by vaccines?
Yeah, autism is caused by vaccines. And I've written a book, if you're interested, called I'm Aerosol, Let the Science Speak, that has, I think, 1,400 references in it, over 400 studies cited that link autism and other related neurological injuries to vaccines. There is no question about it. If you actually read the literature, if you listen to what the propaganda that CDC tells you, yeah, vaccines don't cause autism. But it's propaganda. This is a captive agency that is intertwined and owned by the pharmaceutical industry.
RFK Jr. is not the only person who apparently believes this claim. The far-right Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted about this clip circulating and said, "I fully believe vaccines cause autism. It's another example of crimes against humanity, and innocent babies, children, and their families are the victims." President-elect Trump, for his part, was somewhat more ambiguous when he was asked about this belief.
Between vaccines and autism, do you believe there's a link?
Well, I don't look. Right now, you have some very brilliant people looking at it. I had dinner the other night with the head of Pfizer, the head of Eli Lilly, and RFK, as you know, and Oz. And we had, and other people within the administration that are involved in the medical. And we're looking to find out, if you look at autism, so 30 years ago we had, I've heard numbers of like 1 in 200,000, 1 in 100,000. And now I'm hearing numbers of 1 in 100. So something's wrong. There's something wrong. And we're going to find out about it.
Now, I wanted to talk about this story, even though it's controversial, even though my take on it may upset some people because it was going viral over the last couple days, and because I think it's really important. And I think it demonstrates why I do not support RFK Jr.'s nomination for HHS secretary. And I do not think he should be in charge of our nation's health in this kind of official capacity. RFK Jr., MTG, and others make a lot of good and sometimes insightful criticisms of the politicization of our health industries and of our health departments that we saw throughout COVID. They rightly criticize the revolving door and the connection between these regulatory agencies and the companies they're supposed to be reining in, but they leave the agency, they go to the private sector, they come back, they become lobbyists. There's a lot of corruption and sketchy stuff that happens here, and they do question a lot of dogmas that needed to be questioned during the pandemic around things like lockdowns and COVID vaccine mandates and so much more. But my problem with this crowd is that they advocate for this intense skepticism of the establishment that I'm okay with. I want more skepticism, but then never seem to apply that same amount of skepticism to the anti-establishment takes and theories, which they often just accept at face value and fail to really interrogate or investigate at any length or in any detail. So, for example, the claim that vaccines cause autism is not correct or true. I'll get into studies and the data and research in a moment, but just on a fundamental level, it doesn't make sense. Yes, autism rates have increased significantly in recent decades, in part due to an increase in our ability to diagnose autism. But yes, potentially there's been an increase in the underlying condition itself as well. And that's absolutely something that should be interrogated and investigated. Although it has been looked into, we clearly do not have answers fully yet, and we need further research and investigation. But childhood vaccines are not the answer, and it doesn't even make sense as a theory, as Jill Esker explained in this piece for the Free Press. She wrote, "How do we know vaccines cannot be causing the autism increase? Let me count the ways. We know that a hallmark of autism is dysregulation of brain development starting in the prenatal period. Childhood immunizations simply cannot explain what goes wrong during gestation." What she's saying here is that part of what seems to be correlated with the causing of autism are things that happen while you're still in the womb, before the childhood vaccines. So them causing autism doesn't make sense. It's much more likely that people associate incorrectly vaccines with autism because vaccines are administered at around the same time in an age, in terms of the child's development, 1 or 2 years old, when autism signs start to become visible. The Free Press article continues, "There is not a single ingredient in vaccines that can cause childhood brain development to go awry, and no animal study shows links between vaccines and the abnormal brain development seen in autism. What's more, there is no plausible reason vaccines could explain autism's strong heritability, for example, sharply increased incidence among siblings, or its strong male-to-female ratio of about 4-1. This is an important point. If vaccines were causing autism, we wouldn't see more males having it than females if they're getting vaccines at the same rate. We also wouldn't see siblings getting it more frequently. That just doesn't make sense." The Free Press further adds that the vaccine schedule can't possibly explain the steadily accelerating rates over time. RFK famously blamed thimerosal for causing autism, which wasn't proven, but it was taken out of vaccines anyway in 2001, and autism rates have continued to increase at a steady pace. And finally, as Jill Esker points out, every epidemiological study on the topic has confirmed zero association between vaccination status and the development of autism. I'll link to the Autism Science Foundation, which has a long list of meta-analysis of studies that have been published reviewing this and finding no correlation. Now, RFK doesn't believe these studies in many cases because some, although not all, are affiliated with or funded by the CDC or other government health agencies, and I don't think they're faking this research, but I mean, I can understand skepticism of some kind of government research, but that's not all we have to go by. There are also plenty of international studies, like one, as pointed out by Charles Leman on Twitter, of 600,000 Danish children born between 1999 and 2010, in which MMR vaccination, which RFK links to autism, was associated with a non-significant reduction in autism risk after controls. You can't blame that one on CDC propaganda. You know it's bad because even Twitter, which these days is a pretty friendly audience for the likes of RFK and Marjorie Taylor Greene, appended a massive community note to this post, linking so many sources it can't even fit in one screenshot, proving that this claim is not true. So like I said, I don't hate RFK Jr., and I think he sometimes makes interesting points or has interesting critiques, but I don't think he should be put in charge of the nation's health governmental organizations and agencies when he clearly believes things that are not true, are not supported by the evidence, and seems impervious to data that contradicts his preconceived notions. Simply, if you believe lots of things, and not just this, there's many others, about health and science that are completely untrue, you should not be given control of the government's health agencies. That's my hot take. And I do think we need to realize that skepticism should never go in just one direction. Yes, the establishment and the mainstream media just treated during the pandemic and otherwise all these mainstream institutions with no skepticism whatsoever, and that's a mistake. But it's also a mistake to treat fringe blogs and internet personalities and other people with no skepticism at all either, just because they're anti-establishment. You've got to be a skeptic all the time. or you end up just as misled as if you're a skeptic none of the time. But what do you guys think? If you disagree with me, still love you, but do want you to think with an open mind about this one.